Hey Dunchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and it is time for my review of the second studio EP from No Mana. This one is called Above the Blue. No Mana is a Californian house producer best known for his contributions to Deadmau5's label Mousetrap. Even snagged himself an official spot on the physical release of Deadmau5's W Drive 2016 album, as well as a spot on the last 3 volumes of Mousetrap's We Are Friends series. But more importantly, No Mana released his absolutely astounding debut EP, Game Over on Mousetrap last year. Game Over was an EP that both surprised me and entertained me enough to end up making my top 10 EPs of 2016 list, and it ended up placing pretty high as well. Regardless, I was not expecting No Mana to release another full-length EP this soon, just a little over 6 months after Game Over released. But here we have Above the Blue, which is a much more light-hearted counterpart to Game Over. In fact, I feel like Above the Blue is very much on the opposite end from Game Over, largely because No Mana has dropped that really dark, minimal brand of house that was so prevalent on the Game Over EP. And that's not to say that Above the Blue doesn't take any influence from No Mana's darker styles, because that just wouldn't be true. But in terms of this EP's heavy hitters, things are sounding a lot more progressive, and I'm especially referring to the EP's lead single, Constellations. In fact, I almost feel like it would have been a better scheme to have this EP released prior to Game Over, just because I feel like the content of this better transitions from No Mana's original stuff on Mousetrap, like the song Tell Me, which is a lot more progressive. I kind of thought he was stepping away from that style and getting onto that hard, minimal electro house sound, but it seems like he's kind of gone back from that and retreated back into a little bit more of familiar territory with this EP. Now, I definitely don't want to make this out to be a bad thing, because I honestly do think that No Mana does a great job in whatever genre that he chooses to pursue. I will say though, as an EDM project, this EP is very much so harder to judge just because of its lack of focus on drops. In fact, I'd probably say there's only one song on this entire EP that kind of follows that standard EDM drop formula, and that's Static. I guess you could also argue that with the song Moon, which has these risers that kind of build up like it's going to have this big drop, but then it kind of remains pretty constant in the song throughout. And because of that general pattern and that constant feel that most of the tracks on this EP carry, I'd argue that this EP is a lot more dreamy than any of the projects No Mana has worked on before. I guess to fully be able to enjoy this EP, listeners would kind of have to get out of the dancing mindset of things and kind of get into just listening to this thing as an electronic work and kind of just letting it take you off into space. And on No Mana's part, I feel like he does an excellent job filling up the textures and flipping things around with different styles, at least in the first 3 tracks on this EP, with Moon, like I already mentioned, kind of carrying that consistent progressive house sound throughout it, and then you've got the song Static, which is a little bit more of a kind of chilled out hard electro house song, kind of some interesting contrasting things there. The song Less Than 3, which kind of, to me, at least in the terms of its melodies, kind of sounds a little bit more like it could be a synthwave song, but then of course it's at a bit of a house tempo. Another thing though that I have to praise about this EP is No Mana's specific use of vocalists, and that's not just on the track Less Than 3, but it kind of extends into the latter half of this EP. I actually think Winnie Ford was a great pairing with No Mana on the song Constellations, which actually came to surprise me as one of the better tunes on the record, considering I haven't always loved his progressive works more than his other stuff, as well as the song Clear, which is of course No Mana's 3rd collaboration with the vocalist Zachanel. Zachanel, if you didn't already know, is kind of a common feature for smaller name progressive house artists, so her last couple appearances on No Mana's tracks Over and Over was progressive house, and then of course Restart being an electro house isn't too much out of that vein. I really don't feel like No Mana's pushed her as a vocalist as much as he could until this track, with No Mana having Zachanel sing over this experimental electronic instrumental that's heavily led by a rock beat, as well as being fueled pretty heavily by electric and acoustic guitar. As noisy and gritty that it is, actually came together to be one of my favorite tracks on the EP, arguably my favorite on the project. Don't think I can say the same though for the song Left in the Snow. Honestly think the vocals from Mark Sloteroff on here sound pretty thrown on, like they didn't really belong with the instrumental to begin with. Along with that, Left in the Snow has this really atmospheric progression that kind of builds up for 2 minutes and then just goes into nothing, and then the track just ends, and it's really awkward to say the least. This song is by far my least favorite moment on the EP, that given it is the shortest track on here, so I don't really have to deal with it too long in the context of the rest of the EP. Although there are some great moments on this EP that distract from it, I think all in all, this EP comes out to be a bit more bland than Game Over for me. One thing that I really look forward to when it comes to No Mana's full-length EPs is that they tend to separate themselves a bit from his Up series because they're much less club-oriented, and with the first couple tracks on this EP, I kind of felt like they could have just been easily put onto an 11 Up, a short EP, and I wouldn't have been able to tell the difference, you know? And sure, this EP does have some decent to great production on it by No Mana, but is this thing even nearly as conceptual or experimental as his last EP? In my opinion, no. Of course, with the exception of Clear, which is easily one of my favorite tracks that No Mana has done to date. I'd probably even put it in my top 5, maybe even top 3 that he's done. I didn't love this EP, but I'm definitely not opposed to it either. I'm just really curious to see where No Mana is going to go next, since this one was so opposite in the direction that Game Over was going. And while it's good to get so much new music in just a 6-month block, I definitely hope No Mana takes his time with this next EP or album or whatever he's gonna do next. We'll see. For Above the Blue, I am feeling a strong 5.5 to a light 6. If you guys haven't listened to this EP yet, as always, I have the Spotify link down in the description below, so you guys can go check it out if you'd like to. And I'm sure a lot of you are requesting it, so I'm guessing you guys have some opinions. Make sure to let me know what you thought about this EP, especially in comparison to the last one, down in the comments section below. I'm Landon Remixes. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I'll see you later. Peace.
Wow, 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 wow.